Away we go. Woo! Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Welcome. And a big welcome to Gary Simon. Thank you so
How's
much
it
for joining
going?
us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Excited to share the news of the new course. I really haven't shared it at all with my audience, so it should be a good surprise, and that's something that we'll be checking out here.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Looking forward to talking a bit about that and a few other things, such as your design bugbears, your design loves, and even your pets. So that's exciting.
Oh,
But
yeah.
first, we do have the weekly web dev challenge competition. And last week, because of an unexpected event, we showed the entries first, which we don't normally do. They're normally at the end. But a few people said they liked it. So I thought we'll do that again. And then we'll open the poll. And then while we're chatting, Gary, people can vote. And then we'll reveal the winners at the end.
Awesome.
So, yeah. So the challenge was to style something like this, either an exact copy or your own take on it. And everyone did really well. So let's have a look at the entries. So the first one is from Lucky Victory with this colorful take and this cool gradient button with this amazing effect.
Nice.
Yeah, I really like that.
Yeah. Did you want me to make comments about these?
Go ahead. Yeah.
All right. So based on what I see here, it would, at least on this viewport that's large, this is like obviously like a desktop resolution type of design. A larger headline would definitely help create for the visual hierarchy here. And for those of you who don't know what visual hierarchy is, basically when everything's styled similar in terms of like a similar size, for instance, scale's real important when it comes to visual hierarchy. It's kind of you're not real sure where you should look for or what you should be looking at first. And so making that a larger, maybe by like twice as large what it is now, would definitely help that element. If you hover off, can you hover off of that button? One thing, it might be a little bit much on the gradient there. What might be even more effective there for that is just making it solid white. That way that call to action really stands out as much as possible. But other than that, I like everything else. Everything's real solid here. And of course, these changes that I mentioned, for the most part, they're very easy to integrate.
Yeah, actually, I was going to ask you for your thoughts on the original design, which was mine, a bit later.
Okay.
But as we're doing this, why don't we do this one now?
Yeah. So I would almost make the same comments about the headline, maybe a little bit larger for that headline. It's not too bad in terms of size.
Yeah.
I would say, I remember looking at the original. Right now, I'm only looking at the stream version, but I do know that you had like a very subtle, what's it called? A box shadow on there on the type to separate the white from the background. Is that still there? I'm just...
No, I think that's on one we coded on another live stream.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I think we recreated it. Yeah.
Right.
So was that a good thing or a bad thing?
Well, it was a good thing because the version I was looking at, it was kind of hard to see the actual white. But right now, it's pretty good because the way you have it set up, maybe if you change the height of that little preview mini browser right there, it might become more difficult to read or less. Okay, maybe it's not the height, it could be the width. But I just remember thinking, yeah, it's actually not that bad here. For some reason, it was different in the other version because there wasn't a lot of contrast between the headline that was sitting on top of it and the background. So the background, one of the ways to alleviate that, there's two ways, or probably maybe even more, but the two ways that I thought of: making a larger headline just so that the type is more readable, or taking the background and making it a little bit darker. That way it increased the contrast. Outside of that, I would say the same comment about the other one, about this one, about the call to action. It's still pretty identifiable, but I really like a call to action that's just like highly contrast quite a bit. So in this context, making it white with obviously maybe like a black or whatever sign up text would be a little bit more preferable, but still it's not that bad. One thing I would say, having drastic changes on the hover, I've never been a big fan of. Maybe
really?
just subtle changes. I remember in the first one though that you sent me, you also had it scaling up real big and then falling back down over the course of a couple seconds. Yeah,
That was
I was
a
like,
bit of a joke we put in.
oh, okay. I was gonna
Realized
say,
that
yeah,
wasn't
no.
suggested for a real design. No.
Okay. But yeah, then this one is an improvement over that one that I saw there.
Yeah. Lovely
All right,
tip.
let's check
Thanks
out
very
some
much.
other ones here.
Yeah. So this is from Oculario. So made a lovely copy of the original design, very accurately done, but then has actually created a whole site, basically.
Oh, okay. Nice.
And this is completely their own design that they've made. How good is that?
Right. I like the gallery here, especially. A nice separation between each of the photographs. It's nice and consistent, you know, just in terms of the white space between, you know, them vertically and also in the columns. Because that's one thing that people sometimes overlook, is just like inconsistent white space between their thumbnails and such. Looking at this one, the cards above, I would say maybe changing the paragraph text to just make that like a dark gray or a black. That way you're not using that color so much. I think it's good for the sub headline, which just says week 1 and week 2, and then the actual headline being like master, exposure, and ambient. Those are pretty solid, but I think separating them out visually a little bit more, which would help the visual hierarchy, just to change that paragraph text underneath the image to like either like a black or, you know, a dark gray or something like that.
Yeah, no, that's a good idea. Yeah, lovely. And the actual creator of this one is in the chat, has pointed out that it's also responsive, which is very impressive.
Yeah, awesome.
Very cool. Yeah. Next we have one from Kurti, who has created this one with this cool frosted glass effect, which I think is really nice.
That's like the glass UI trend of 2021.
Yeah. And this button's got an interesting effect. Got a little very subtle gradient.
Right. And another thing, you know, that's a call to action. It's the thing that you want people to do. You know, it's the action you want people to take. And especially every landing page should have one, especially for like a sign up now. Make that white. I can tell you right now, make that white. It'll stand out a lot more than what it is now, because it's a little bit more of an afterthought. So the glass effect and all that's fine, but your button, the action you want them to take, you want that to have maximum contrast, or at least close to.
Yeah, lovely. And then we have one from Kuntal, who has made this, which has a really cool button effect.
All right, so they did choose to take the background and make it darker. So that's pretty cool. Okay.
That does look good. Very good. And then when you sign up, you get the email popping up.
Okay, that's cool.
Sign in. Yeah.
Right. So when you click into that email form, that text field, there's very little white space when you put in your email address. So I would say increase the white space around there, so the bottom of the type, like of the email, isn't right up against the bottom of the text field. White space is always a helpful thing, especially when it comes to form elements. The email, the overlay, it's like a floating label, it looks like. I would probably left align that and not center everything. Just
all right.
And also, I'm kind of unsure what's happening with the empty button underneath in the input field, where it's just that gradient button. There's no text in it.
No, we do have this cool cancel button.
Right. So I would say I would transition that button that you clicked originally to that cancel button. That way you don't have like two buttons, one that's empty and you're not really sure what to do with. Otherwise, very cool in terms of the front end development aspect and the animation to make that pop up like that.
Yeah, that is cool. Got someone called Rids in the chat who says, "Hey Gary, your UI design fundamentals are awesome. Recently, I've applied the concepts taught by you in my work, and it's been amazing. Thanks for being an amazing teacher."
Awesome. Thanks a lot. I love hearing news like that. Makes it more worthwhile, obviously, doing what I do.
Excellent. Yeah. So the next one I've got is from Ambreen, who's completely changed the design and made their own site as well.
Nice.
But there are some similarities. They've got this background image,
Mm-hmm.
which is very nice.
Yes. All right.
And lots of different sections.
Right.
Testimonials. Yeah.
Yeah. Everything here looks pretty solid. If we scroll back up, you know what? This is very, very. I'm getting deja vu right now because I think it's. I think I did a layout very similar to this in my UI design bootcamp.
Oh.
Yeah,
Previous
because I was like,
students
where did I see this before? But maybe they got that inspiration from there. Otherwise, I would say the background image seems to be a little bit washed out in a sense. The way they've changed it, it's just kind of like it's muted in a sense, and that kind of they've made it almost kind of like lighter in a sense. And so the foreground text where it says photography amateur and photography master and so on and so forth, there's not a ton of contrast. So I don't know, maybe taking off that wash out effect of that background, but then just making the background darker will help bring those foreground topography elements kind of stand out more, more contrast. But yeah, other than that, yeah, very cool. And obviously if he or she did take this as inspiration for this top part for mine, that's completely fine. The bottom part, though, I could tell I don't really recall designing anything like that. But so yeah, everything else here looks pretty solid.
I've actually got Ambreen here. Ambreen here. Yes, I got the inspiration from your bootcamp design.
Okay, awesome.
As I also mentioned on Discord. Oh, that's nice. Yeah, lovely. Cool. And then on to the next one, which is from Palak. And what's really cool about this one, I really like the colors for starters, but it also has 2 different modes.
There we go.
I think is awesome.
There we go. Yeah.
They've also reused the green here, works with both of the color schemes. Well, I think it does.
Right.
Maybe you disagree.
If you switch back to dark mode, yeah, that definitely works. I would say it works a lot better. The green call to action, it works better with that dark background as opposed to the lighter. Let's see what that looks like. Yeah, personally, upon that change for the light mode, I would probably make that button white, the background, and then obviously take the sign up now. Maybe use that same pinkish color or just make it black. But other than that, yeah, very cool.
Yeah, super cool. Lovely. And then we've got one from Amy, who decided to take a different look on this one. It's become a professional developer instead of a photographer. So similar design.
Right. Yeah, so this cool. Time, there's pretty good contrast with the headline. Again, I would probably make it a little bit larger, the headline text. And sometimes when you have so little content to work with, because all it says is pro course at the top, and then you have one headline and then a button. Sometimes it makes sense to take, if that's like wrapped in an H1 element, just to take the H1 element and maybe change the width to like 50%, and that way it has multiple lines and can kind of fill out the design a little bit more.
Yeah, so it probably is like that on the mobile.
Right, and it just fills it out a little bit more. Yeah, but the sign up button, that's a pretty, if you're going to use gradients on buttons, that's a pretty a good gradient. It works well. It stands out well as well. So yeah, very cool.
Does. Lovely. And the final one is from Maura. It's actually quite similar, but I really like the effect here. I'm not sure if there's some kind of overlay on the background, but it looks kind of purple. Maybe that was just the image anyway.
Right,
but in any case,
right.
I think it looks cool.
Right. So looking at this, sometimes it's hard for me to immediately, diagnose or ascertain a design. I would say I've never been a huge fan of having big text shadows, like drop shadows on parts of text or bits of text. If you're going to use shadows, I hate to try to put things in absolutes, because design is a very creative thing, and there's very few objective rules in design. But But I would say for me personally, if I put that, like if I wanted to highlight professional photographer, I think I would personally go the route of just changing the actual color of that type, maybe wrap it in a span element or something, and then just take that span element, change the color property, and make it that color to stand out. Those type of drop shadows have you know, that was real popular back in like the early 2000s or late 90s, like when I started designing and stuff. But that's just a minor gripe, really, just for me. And it could be argued that that's a subjective preference of me. But I do know in terms of modern like design trends, we really don't see that too much in terms of adding drop shadows on text in that manner, at least when it comes to like a big blur and it's something that stands out like with a higher contrast like this. But other than that, I like the colors. It's a cool photograph as well. It has like that. It looks like an RGB split on the background, which it's probably baked into the image itself. Although you could probably do that with CSS in some creative way. But very cool.
Yeah. Michael R says, I miss neon. We should bring it back. I'm with you on that one, Michael. Yeah, totally. He also says, that really looks like my camera. Interesting. Yeah. Fabulous interpretations. So I will now open the winner poll. So please vote, and we will reveal the winners at the end of the show.
Nice.
And now, I'll continue chatting to Gary. So your new course, Coding for Designers, is dropping very soon on Scrimba. And what can you tell us about it?
All right. So basically, when you have aspiring front-end developers, a lot of times when they're learning HTML and CSS and JavaScript or whatever, but if we're talking about learning how to translate designs into code, a lot of times they're working from instructors who might not be great designers. And so they're working on projects that I don't want to say are ugly, you know, but they're not really representative of like if you're working on a team who has a dedicated designer who's really good, you're going to be it's not like that in the sense that when you're starting out, you're working with kind of designs that just aren't realistic in terms of what you actually will be working with as a front end developer to translate. So this course, my strength is in UI UX design. Of course, I'm a front-end developer as well, and I've worked in that capacity. But I wanted to create a course where where the students are given a chance to work with designs that are really well designed and put together well. So they're all based in Figma. And so when you take this course, you're going to have access to the Figma prototypes themselves. And your goal is to simply take those designs and make them a reality with HTML, CSS, and some JavaScript. There's some JavaScript, but it's not like really intensive or anything like that. And so when you're a designer, for instance, and you're used to working in applications like Figma or Adobe Experience Design, Adobe XD, you don't have the ability or the skill set yet to also translate those designs into front-end development as well. So there's really just two purposes, in my opinion, about the course. Two use cases. It's for like designers who want to learn how to code and take those designs as mockups that they've created and translate that into HTML, CSS. But also for people who are aspiring front-end developers who want to be able to work with actual, pretty polished designs and translating those into code, if that makes sense.
That sounds great. Yeah. And Trailerman says, oh, wow, Gary's new course is coming up on Scrimba. Indeed, it is. Correct.
Yep. I'm thinking
the next couple of weeks.
Yep, for sure. Could be next week. Definitely for sure within 2 weeks.
Awesome. Yeah, looking forward to that. Now, you've mentioned that there will be designs in Figma. Shall we take a look at a few of them now?
Yeah. Okay. So the way I structured this is we start with, and you could share my screen here.
I would, but everything's currently frozen.
Great.
So,
there it goes.
There we go. That's actually my screen. Do you want? Oh no, it's not.
All right.
That
so
is your screen. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. There we go. This is the very first project, and as you can see, you might not be wowed, which you shouldn't be, because my thought process on this course was to start very simple. So this isn't what you would call a full layout. This is just a component of a layout that you might encounter, which is just a card component. And so we start from something very simple like this, and we work our way up into a much more robust design. And I'll show that one, the final project, in a second. But as you can see, for what it is, albeit very simple, it's designed well. You're going to learn how to, take this design here and figure out, how can we accurately translate this into code, so that we can make it look like this as much as possible, and as accurately as possible in the browser, and also make them responsive. So as you can see, we have a mobile version of what it should look like over here. And then we also have right here a desktop version. And so all of the designs that you're going to be working with in this course are responsive. And so that's going to be part of the challenges. So each project at the very beginning, you're going to see this prototype. I'm going to say, go ahead, figure out how to do this. And then after you try that, then I'm going to show you how I would tackle it. And the great thing about front-end development, it's kind of like it's an art in a way, because it's almost like UI design. There's a lot of ways to achieve the same thing. So you'll get my particular take on it. Basically after this project, there's a number of other projects, and then we end up with a final project right here, which is obviously a lot more elaborate and a lot more stuff happening, more, intermediate to advanced techniques in terms of achieving, this sort of overlay effect here with this type. This thing should animate. So there's going to be a lot of specific details about the challenges that you are to try to, figure out how you would do in the CSS and JavaScript portion. This right here, what would you use for this? Would you use Flexbox? Would you use the grid? So there's going to be a lot of challenges, and obviously making this whole thing responsive as well. That's going to be a part of the challenge. So like I said, we're starting from very simple, like this, and we're going to be working our way up into a design that, it has to be responsive and has to have a mobile version with like a slide out navigation that animates. So you're going to, the people who take this course, they're going to get a lot of practice, a lot of muscle memory in terms of making a design responsive, and then also just achieving certain layout patterns that are common and some that aren't.
Yeah. Also, on the topic of responsiveness, a little while ago, Trailerman asked, is mobile first still the way to go?
Mobile first design. So what do you mean in terms of mobile first design? Are you saying when you're working within Figma or, Adobe XD, like the actual design process, or are you saying like front-end development process? So for me, to answer that, I'll answer both of those questions. For me, when I'm designing within XD or Figma, I like designing the full desktop experience first.
Really?
That way I can understand exactly what the full scope of it needs to be, of the project, and then I can work my way down. Now, there may be some other designers who prefer to work opposite of that, and that's completely fine. Now, when it comes to front-end development, for me, it's mobile first. I think that's what most people prefer to do. It simplifies your initial coding outside of the media queries. So that's the tactic or the approach that I recommend, and that's what I also take in this course when I demonstrate my solutions for some of these challenges.
Yeah, looks lovely. We've got people super excited for the course. Very
Awesome.
nice design. Awesome. And the grid with images looks amazing. It does. I am really looking forward to finding out how to do that, because looking at it now, I honestly have no idea. So that will be very exciting.
Yes.
So, of all the projects you've made, maybe in here or maybe elsewhere, do you have a favorite or a most memorable?
Well, in terms of this particular course, I like this one the most because it's the one I was able to kind of go a little bit more crazy on, in terms of the layout and stuff. In terms of just personal projects that I've created, just last year, I play guitar. And one of the things that frustrated me about playing guitar and learning the music theory behind it is if you're trying to learn a new scale, you might go to Google and you type in the scale name, and then you just get a bunch of images that might be hard and they might be blurry and stuff. I tried to find apps, and there are apps that do this, but none of them look good. And I'm a designer, and I wanted to make something that was really good looking. And so I came up with this site or the service, along with a partner who's a much better developer than myself. So I handled the design, most of it, and then he handled the coding. And that is, why am I typing Figma? It's Frettastic.com. Now he just made an update, so hopefully everything works here still. But yeah, Frettastic is just a site where you can have this virtual fretboard of sorts. And it allows you to basically learn music theory in relation to guitar in an interactive fashion. So we have a bunch of cool stuff like you can have backing tracks that pulls in data from the YouTube API, and then it'll automatically switch your scales that will work with this thing. And so, yeah, this is there's a light mode and dark mode as well. Although this one blasts me in the eyes, so I don't think probably many people use that one, but I wanted to do it anyhow. But yeah, this is probably, of my more recent projects, the ones that I like the most. And it's actually making some money, so that's always a plus.
Even better. Yeah. We've got a few guitarists in the chat, so maybe they can check it out.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't know if you're able to share the link in the chat, but if not, let us know what it is and I'll type it in.
Yeah, it is Frettastic.com. I'm not even sure where the chat is. So Frettastic. Yeah, so I don't see wherever the chat is.
Is there only one T? Let me test it. Yep, that's the one.
Yep.
There we go. Oh, Bob's here. That's not Bob, that's Michael. Bob says, that's awesome. Yeah, I agree. Very good indeed. Yeah. So on to the negatives, I suppose. What are your biggest bugbears in UI design, apart from gradient buttons, it seems, from our chat earlier?
Well, we're going to circle back around to that in a bit, but about the gradient backgrounds. But I really love UI design, and I love when I get to start from scratch on a new project or whatever. And so there's not much about the process that I dislike, just because it comes naturally. I've been doing it so long. And so there's not much points of frustration that I deal with. Although I would have to say, if I thought about it, sometimes when you need a photograph and you really are wanting a particular photograph, and maybe you're on unsplash.com, which is where I go most of the time these days to get photographs. Yeah. Finding the right photograph can be very challenging and difficult at times. So that's one issue of contention. Another issue I would say is dealing with large prototype files, like large Figma prototypes, that have 100 different frames or canvases or artboards, whatever you want to call them. Especially if somebody else created them and maybe they didn't use components correctly, so that it makes the process of updating them easier. So that can always be an annoying part of the process, so to speak, if things aren't set up correctly. And I remember back when Adobe XD first came out, and Adobe XD or Experience Design came out before Figma, I believe, in 2016. And it was tough to work in, because when you're working on a real project, which I don't get to do very often, I'm a YouTuber, I teach people this stuff, and usually they're one-off, very simple. They're not really massive projects like your average site might be, with a bunch of pages. I found that when you're working with these, bigger projects, it's so important to understand how to properly utilize the components, your reusable elements, because when a client comes back to you or your employer or whatever, and they say, hey, we need to change something, that may mean you're going to have to change it in a million different files. or not files, but a million different areas of the actual design. So yeah, those would be the two things that I would find most frustrating. But for me, there's not very many things that frustrate me in terms of the UI UX design process.
Good news. Yeah. I've got to mention earlier, if you've got questions for Gary, some of you are doing it already, but feel free to drop them into the chat and I'll do my best to ask them. Yeah. So what do you think will be the hottest UI design trends this year? We have had a look. Frosted glass seems to be
right.
Off.
Yeah. The glass effect. I actually covered a video, and let me see. I have it right here. Okay. So if you share my screen real quickly. I did this was on February 16th. So it's just a couple months ago. A new UI design trend. I like it. So I called it, I just kind of came up with this name myself, Aurora Backgrounds. And if you go to, I'm not sure if you can, if that term has actually taken off in dribble.com just yet, but I've been noticing a lot of backgrounds here. They're kind of like gradients, but they're meshed gradients where you have, let me see if I am able to showcase any more of these. You'll see basically they're like gradient backgrounds, but they introduce a lot of different colors and such. Almost kind of like the frosted glass type thing, but it's not really, that's not what the intention here is. I personally, if they're done well, I like the trend. When it comes to the frosted glass trend, that's one of those things that you can't get away with as much as using, because so you should definitely not use that sort of aesthetic on every project. It has to be relevant. It has to make sense. But when it comes to these sort of like just colorful backgrounds, more interesting, like things like this, I think you can get away with it, using it a little bit more because it's more of a generalized thing. So I think, this makes sense here. In terms of front-end development, I've been teaching a lot of 3JS lately and getting into it myself. I really think the things that you can do with WebGL obviously takes UI design and front-end development up to a next level, so to speak. So maybe we'll see more of that. I'm definitely teaching more of it, so we'll see if I influence more people to kind of get behind integrating things like, the WebGL experiences where it makes sense.
Yeah, sounds interesting. Actually, earlier on the topic of trends, software testing trends, very apt name, said, Gary, it would be great if you can create a video or write an article about trends used in different times. That would
right. Yeah, that's possibly a video topic, because I'm always trying to search for video ideas. I've done over like 900 videos on my channel. Sometimes it's a real, it's tough. It's tough to come up with new ideas. But yeah, that would be cool. Like every major trend in the last, maybe, in the last 20 years or something like that. Because there's been many, and I've been around pretty much for all of them. There was a trend I remember. Well, I have actually covered like my UI design portfolio from the late 90s and early 2000s, and you'll see some funny trends that there was weird stuff. Like for some reason there was a trend where it was cool to have really tiny text that you could barely read because it made it look like it was sci-fi or something. There's a lot of different things going on back then. And of course, then Web 2.0 came around. You see a lot of gradients. Everything was soft. Everything was round. And then we had the flat design trend that where it was, kind of the opposite of that. We're just returning to simplicity. So yeah, there's a lot of different things that you could definitely cover. So that definitely a good video idea. I will do that. Yeah,
that would be awesome. Jose popped in and asked, what do you hate most about UI design? Gary answered that a little bit earlier.
So yeah, I did.
Back later and find out what his bugbears are. Frank Justice says, do designers commonly work alone or with a team?
Well, I guess that can mean a couple things. I guess in this day and age, during and post-COVID, there's going to be more people working alone in their own home, remotely. That doesn't necessarily mean they're not working on teams, though. In terms to answer your question, I don't know what that stat is, like what the statistic is. Like when it comes to people who work on design, I assume maybe you're talking about UI, UX design. There's obviously a lot of different areas of design outside of that. But I don't really know like how. I would have to say, a lot of people, when they think about getting employed, being a UI, UX designer, they're looking at, I forget the acronym. What's the acronym for the big, large tech companies? It's, they think about Facebook, Google, YouTube, and all that. It's something like Fanga or
Fang. It is Fang. Yeah,
somebody's going to mention in the comments. Of course, those are massive teams, but those are probably few and far between. Most designers are probably working on teams that are either just themselves or maybe another person, and that's it. But I could be wrong. For me personally, I love freelance. I don't like working for a boss. I've actually never worked for a boss. I've worked as a subcontractor for a little while, for like 3 months. But yeah, in terms of like working for myself, that's what I prefer to do. And of course, I did that for a long time. And now I just work for myself, doing the educational route.
Yeah. We've got Denny saying Fang.
There you go. I knew it was that.
And even Bobsy Roll giving us, that's not Bobsy Roll. That's Bobsy Roll saying Fang. And then the explanation right here. Very good. Yeah. And there was another question here. That was the one. What are some common design mistakes that you see on live websites? I think would be interesting to know about.
Right. Yeah. So I do it's actually, I haven't done it for 2 months, but I'm going to bring it back. I do a weekly live YouTube stream where I just rate people's designs. And so I've rated thousands of them because I've done this for several years. And what I notice in terms of common design mistakes, they all, because these are mostly from people who are beginners or they're aspiring UI designers, they all make sort of the same mistakes, and they're all sort of based on a lack of understanding, like the 5 or 6 or 7, depending on who you ask, UI design fundamentals. So they're getting white space wrong, which is just the empty space of your design. They're getting color wrong. They're getting contrast wrong. They're getting visual hierarchy wrong. So I can't really say which one it is that they get wrong the most, but if you're an aspiring designer, you have to, it's so boring, like saying white space, visual hierarchy. That doesn't sound fun, but it's seriously, it has to be, or it needs to be, or should be your foundation. And you should really understand what all of those, 5 or 6 or 7 UI design fundamentals are and how to apply them. And of course, in the Scrimba, my Scrimba boot camp, the UI design boot camp, I cover all of those in detail. And so, yeah, it's usually just.
I'm just finding the link for it, actually. Here we go.
Yeah, so it's usually one of those things. The common mistakes are based on those 5 or 6 or 7 different things. So
check out Gary's design bootcamp, and that will help you out with that. And his new course, which will be dropping soon. Actually, I just remembered that earlier I came up with a landing page for Gary's new course. So just pop your email in there and you'll be the first to hear when it lands very, very soon. Cool. Yeah. Now the next one I need to get a link up for, which is right here. So brace yourself. You might want to put a pair of sunglasses on. So go. You have 5 minutes to improve this website, which is the world's worst website ever.com. What would you do in 5 minutes to make this more bearable?
Well, assuming I was like a robot and I could work extremely fast, I would say increase the white space. Everything's smashed together. Like you can see like that yellow banner in the middle. Everything's kind of just crammed together against borders. Get rid of all the borders, first of all. So increase white space, get rid of the borders. I would create, let's see here. I would get rid of a lot of the animated GIFs because that is a massive distraction.
There's
What
so
else would
many
I
of
do?
them.
I would get rid of the repeating background
Oh yeah.
on the body element. What else would I do? Oh man, maybe I would say I would just start
more.
from scratch. Oh yeah, the marquees. There we go.
Oh,
I
crikey.
remember that was a trend. That was, maybe I can
Yeah.
include that in my trend video.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, there is so much going on here. Yeah, I'm sure. Maybe we could make that a weekly web dev challenge if we could get the code for it.
Yeah, there we
Improve
go.
this. Does this site cause seizures? That is a worrying thought. Yes, let's close it and hope that it doesn't. Yeah, so I've got another would you rather, well, the first actually, would you rather question. And it is, would you rather never be able to use images on your sites again or be limited to black and white for everything else?
So when you say images, are you talking about like photographs, or are you also talking about like icons, like SVG icons or things like
I had
that?
in mind just photos. So
Okay,
let's
just
say
photos. Yeah, I mean, for me, I would get rid of the photographs. Yeah, because I really like the color. And if everything was just completely monotone. Now, of course, sometimes you need to have photographs, you know, photographs are a central role in many websites. So how is a photographer going to have a website without photographs, right? So I guess it depends on the project there.
Yeah, that's true. But then if you've got a paint shop or something, they kind of need color on their site. So.
Yeah, I guess you could say, you know what, if you had to be forced, if I was at gunpoint, maybe I would say I would just stick with black and white, because we at least could have that very important element of photographs, because sometimes those are necessary. So I would say, for the sake of the user, yeah, we're going to have to stick in everything with monotone, black and white.
Yeah, Alex suggests you could remake all the photos
There we
in
go.
CSS. Yeah, that's some of the things you see on CodePen. They actually look like photos, but they're not. It's quite incredible. Yeah. Are there any UI tips that you think people don't know about that should know about?
Well, I can't say about whether or not who knows what. But just general UI design tips, there's probably many. Of course, I've already talked about this. Make sure you know the fundamentals and what those are and how to apply them. Outside of that, there's a lot of, you know, small tips I've covered throughout, you know, different videos on my YouTube channel. You know, small things like when it comes to understanding how to use shadows. You know, I see a lot of people get shadows wrong. Like, for instance, if you have a maybe I can pull it up here. Let me get up Adobe XD. You can share my screen real quick, and I'll give just an example here, a real quick demo. Let's get this up. All right. So let's say, for instance, we have a button. All right. And my computer is being slow. Okay, of course. So let's say we have a button here. Let's make it a pill-shaped button, and let's make the background real. Yeah, something like that. A little bit of a button here. Now, sometimes I will see people take a button and they want to have a shadow on it. And so they'll take their shadow, they'll maybe do an X of 10, a Y of 10, and then they'll take the shadow and then they'll do this. And that is a big pet peeve of mine. When it comes to using shadows, they really need to be an afterthought. So instead of doing this, if you want to have a shadow, take the opacity down way much so, because it should be an afterthought. So your shadow should never take precedence in terms of contrast over your actual button element or whatever element you're placing it on. So this is 1,000 times better than this. Now you can get away with a higher contrast shadow if you take your blur down a lot more, like this. So this is kind of like the Google material sort of style of shadows. So we can increase the you know, a little bit more like that. But there's so many that, you know, that we'd probably be here for a long time. Another thing that is annoying to me, is bad type. But to be more specific, there's an error or an issue with Adobe XD. Sometimes I'll use the type tool. I try to type and it doesn't work. So it's happening right now. Adobe XD needs to fix that if they're listening. Anyhow,
if you're watching,
bad line height though. So one of the things that frustrates me is bad line height. So you have, maybe a headline that has multiple lines of text, and then it's either spread out. I usually see people have it spread out way too far, and so using that CSS property of line height to try to get things matched up, nice and coherent, is always a good idea, as opposed to sometimes just relying on the default line height that's provided in a given font.
Yeah, because some of the default things in CSS are really not good. Like the button border, for example, drives me mad.
Right.
I just don't know why it's there. Patrice says, how do I find out when the course starts? I had to sign in and it went blank. I'm not sure what went blank. I did test this earlier. I hope it works. It worked for me. But go to this link and put in your email, and then we'll shoot out an email when it's ready. But if you have any problems, you can of course email.
We don't have. We did have a concrete date of April 15th, but I think I just didn't get it done fast enough. So I like I said, it's going to be either later next week or the week after for sure. And of course, sometime approaching that date, we'll have a definitive date, that you can anticipate.
Yeah, and we'll be sending out an email to all Scrimba users when it is live. Illa Gold says, do you prefer to design in Adobe or Figma?
I just started out in Adobe XD. And so I know, because I know the stats, most people like Figma. Me personally, I like using the desktop app, an actual native app. And I think there's some things each of them does better than the other. So really, you can't go wrong with either one. For this course, though, I did use Figma entirely, just because I think it's something that more people use, so it made more sense for me. Yeah,
awesome. Got a few people saying that they have got emails confirming that they've confirmed.
Okay, good.
Want to know when your site's going live. So that's lovely. Final question then, unless more pop up in the chat. I have heard on the grapevine that you're something of an animal lover, as am I. Would you like to tell us about your pets?
All right. So in our household, we have so many pets, and it's really not my fault. It's my children and my wife. My children ask for pets, and she just goes gets them the pests. So we have what do we have? Okay, let me try to go through all the animals we have. We have a bearded dragon. We have a leopard gecko. We have 6. Well, I was gonna say 6 hamsters, but one died last night. So we have 5. We have 3 rats, and believe it or not, I know it's strange, rats make for very good pets. They're way smarter than like a hamster. You can teach them tricks and stuff. They're crazy. But we have 3 rats. We have 1 bunny. We have 4 cats, and we have 2 large breed dogs. We have a golden retriever and a lab. And then my favorites, I have 2 snakes. And so the first snake, if you share my screen real quick, this is my daughter here. So this is this is a Burmese Python. When this was taken, I think she's 9 months old and probably about almost 5 feet. But she's going to get quite large when she's a full adult, at least about 12 or 13 feet. This snake will be. And then I put a video out on my YouTube channel about this large enclosure that I built in my basement. It took me like 4 months.
I've actually seen this. It's amazing. It's got thunderstorms and everything.
So this is the new snake I bought about, it's only been about 2 or 3 weeks ago. This is a reticulated python, which is the longest snake species in the world.
And that looks huge.
Yeah, she's 17 feet. About 115 pounds.
17 feet already.
Yeah. Well, she's 5.5 years old. She was a breeder. So a breeder had her produce. She produced 2 clutches of eggs, they're called, in her life. I'm not going to breed her. She's just kind of going to be a display animal. But she's
Wow.
she's crazy. She was kept in an 8 by 3 foot enclosure, and she's 17 feet.
She's double
So
that.
yeah, this is a 15 feet enclosure by 6.5 feet by 5 feet this way, and then there's a waterfall I have here. So building this was not
It's
easy,
so
and it
cool.
was not cheap either. But I
No.
have another picture of her. Where's she at? Yeah, she's
Wow.
called an orange glow reticulated python. So when it comes to a lot of snake species, there's what are called morphs, and that means they have different colors or different patterns. So this isn't the type of reticulated python you would find in the wild. She's really bright. Most of them, like the normal ones, aren't quite as bright like this. But yeah, she's adjusting to life in this. She actually got herself up inside of this fake rock background, and me and my wife had to drag her out not only once but twice.
Okay.
So she likes tight confined spaces because she's used to that. So
Yeah.
I'm working on building a nice cave for her. But yeah, that's my my main animal here.
Yeah. And Patrice says, how nice you can have all the pets. Yeah, indeed. Out of interest, so it's kind of going off topic, but how do your cats get on with each other? Because we have one cat. We'd like to get more, but I'm not sure how it would
Okay.
go.
Yeah. No, we first had 2 cats and they were siblings. And then we got another pair of cats that were siblings as well. And we didn't get them at the same time. So the other 2 cats were larger, or older rather. And these were kittens that we brought in. And initially we put them in their own room in a cage, and we just slowly introduced them, the other 2 cats to them. And it worked out fine. I'm not a cat expert, but I would think that if you introduce another adult cat with an adult cat, that might not be a great idea, possibly. So maybe try to get a kitten, and then, but again, I could be wrong, but that's how we've done it. And they're fine. Sometimes we'll see 3 or sometimes 4 of them just like napping together. So yeah, that's never been an issue. The big issue you have to worry about is if they start spraying or whatever. That would be bad. And so in that case, you just have to have enough litter boxes. So we have multiple cats, you have to have multiple litter boxes as well.
Yeah. How do they get on with the snake?
Well, we tried to get this big girl out, and she's 115 pounds, but she started hissing a little bit, so we put her back in. But when I take out the other snake, which is much more manageable, they're very inquisitive, so I have to stay by and make sure they don't try to mess with her or whatever. Now, if this snake got out, the cats would be eaten, I'm sure.
Crikey. Yeah. Let's hope that doesn't happen. Yeah. Lovely. So I think it's time to reveal the next challenge. Oh, Gary, I don't know what you're going to say about this, actually. Maybe I should keep it under wraps. The challenge is to build this form, which I created earlier in the week, psychedelic form. What do you think of this, Gary? Other than
when you're saying rebuild it, are you when you say rebuild, do you mean redesign or what?
I mean recreate, but if people want to change up the design, they're more than welcome.
Okay. All right. Well, when it comes to forms and in input elements, I have to ask, is the name and email, is that a floating label, or is that just there as the placeholder?
It's a placeholder.
Okay.
But it does have an ARIA label as well.
Oh, okay. Okay. I would say for sure to make sure that, maybe perhaps for the challenge, when people focus on that, to make sure that name value still appears maybe above it, or like transitions or floats above it. Just because sometimes people with maybe cognitive issues, they'll forget where they're at. They'll forget where we're typing. But yeah, if you're asking me for the design, I mean, you obviously like your colors and your gradients. But the most important thing here, number one, is that when you're looking at your input fields, that they're easily identifiable, and they are. because sometimes people like to put little dividers and that's it, like a border bottom, and that's all. And that could be confusing to people because some people think that those are just weird dividers. They don't even know it's an actual text field or, that they should type in. So you did that. Your sign up button, everything's readable. There's good white space. So albeit it's extremely simple, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's bad. The gradient for me, going from pink to green, I probably wouldn't personally do it, but you know what? It works otherwise.
Yes. Some comments here. Labels, labels, labels. So the best thing to do really is to have a label above it that says name and it says email, as Gary kind of just mentioned. But if you don't want to do that, you can also use an ARIA label, which is basically something in the HTML which says the label of this is a name. So if people are using screen readers, they can still ascertain what it is, basically. And Tarzine says, can you explain how to participate in the challenge? I can. The challenge, this week's challenge, is at this link. And if you would like to join, wrong one, on a weekly basis, you can sign up here. And what will happen then when you hit enroll will be that you get an email every week telling you what the challenge is. So yes, do get involved. That would be lovely. So Gary, I did promise you this would be an hour. So if you need to head off, feel free to do so. And I will reveal the competition winners after you've gone. But you're welcome to stay as well. It's entirely up to you.
Go ahead and do the winners if you're ready.
Okay then, yes, let's reveal the winners. Just have to get them up. So imagine some dramatic music is playing. Sometimes I actually do have dramatic music. Oh look, it's logged me out. How annoying. Dun, 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 dun. And I can now reveal, wowza, that is amazing. The winner by a huge margin is Halak, with this lovely two themed one. I don't really know how to describe it, but yes, that's
so
who won.
They win like $1,000 or what?
And almost. They win $50 of Scrimba swag.
Oh,
and
nice.
a free 6-month subscription.
Nice.
And the weekly web dev winner role over on Discord. Yes. And then I always do some extra questions. This one was choose a fish, and nearly, well, no, less than half, but a majority of people went for Nemo. And the least popular ones were the koi, really, and the puffer fish.
I like the puffer.
Yeah, I think I would have gone for this. I would love to get one of these, but my husband has some kind of beef with bubbly-eyed goldfish, so we can't get one. Choose a snack. The winner was the fries, and the least popular was the avocado toast.
Yeah, the most healthy. Yeah,
the healthiest one. Yeah, who'd have thought? What else do I have to tell you all? Next week, James Q Quick is coming.
Yes,
to chat.
I've spoken with James. There's a super secret Discord server where all of us YouTube tech creators hang out in. So we got Brad Traversy in there. We got Dev Ed there. We got so many people there. It's really cool.
Awesome. Yeah. So come along to that. That would be lovely. And then we have a few more events next week, or this week rather. The meetup tomorrow. And Tea and Code. Oh yeah, this is the thing. Michael and I, will be coding the weekly web dev challenge on Friday in Tea and Code, but there will be a twist, and that is that I will be blindfolded and Michael will be coding. And anyone who's been before will know that Michael absolutely hates CSS and does everything he can to avoid it. So that will certainly be interesting to see the results. Yeah. So I think that's about it. Well, thanks very much for coming, Gary.
Awesome.
It was lovely to have you on, and we will let everyone know when your course drops very soon.
All right. Thanks for having me. It was fun.
Indeed. Yeah. See you later.
All right. Goodbye, everybody.